feel isolated. It's one thing to be discouraged. It's another thing to be depressed. And we just want people through our faith community, which has now been transitioned online, to know you're not in this alone. You're not yourself. We want to keep you encouraged. We want to keep you engaged. And also we ask them, send in your prayer requests and your needs. We want to check your pulse. We want to feel your pulse. We want to know how you're doing. And we want to make sure we walk through anything it is that you're having challenges with. I've actually had several of our members kind of reached out whose teenagers have, one in particular to commit suicide, another one who's been in a deep, dark depression. And so it's real. As Minister Nuri mentioned, in our community, you do see a lot of oppression that does stem from oppression. I mean, you know, as we opened up and talked about, you magnify issues in the communities of color. So whatever the America deals with, our piece struggle with that much more. You do have that whole identity piece, all of those different things. And so I think it's important people to grow spiritually and get closer to God in this season, because there's a verse that says, beloved, I wish things that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. So we believe out of your soul prospering, growing, and thriving, you'll do well in the other areas of your life.
If you're just now joining us, I'm Steve Jefferson, Emmy Award-winning reporter with WTHR. This is the African American Legacy Fund of Indianapolis is sponsoring this panel, Let's Stay Together. They are known for, it's an endowment fund and giving circle developed for us, by us. The organization seeks to support the Black community through philanthropic initiatives that empower our community. Now, we have a panel of religious leaders helping us make sense of some of the challenges that we are facing in our community during this pandemic. Now, we just finished talking about mental health, but our community is experiencing a lot of pain recently with the loss of IMPD officer Breanne Lee just over a month ago, who was serving in the line of duty when she was shot and killed. We lost innocent children like 8-year-old Roderick Payne Jr. and 16-year-old Naya Cope. And now we're dealing, obviously, with the loss of 21-year-old Drayshawn Reed and 19-year-old Mikel Rose, who both died in police action shootings. In the latest incidents, hundreds, maybe even thousands, saw videos on social media of the last minutes and seconds leading up to these two young men's deaths. We extend our condolences to each of their families, friends, coaches, mentors, and social networks who are grieving their deaths at this time. We have the challenge of both community violence and concerns about the recent police action shooting of Reed and Rose, and the issue of community accountability. And I want to ask Reverend Davis, what has been your counsel to the community on the police action shootings? What have you said to your members about this?
Well, what I've said to our members, and even saying to members, clergy members of the Central Indiana Ministerial Alliance of the AME Church, is you don't have to get ready if you stay ready. The African Methodist that speaks to violence to people of color, even in religious spaces. Our founders, who would become to be the founders of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, found themselves in a racially mixed religious experience with their bodies being pulled up from the altar. And that is actually how the African Methodist Episcopal Church went on to be founded. And so even in our religious practice, we are sensitive to the different ways that Black bodies are being treated relative to the broader society. And so what we have said is we do not want to rely upon a reactionary approach to police brutality within our communities. And so we are encouraging our members and our pastors to establish and deepen relationships with their district commanders, so that when we as a collective of congregations come together to address the city, we have those relationships already built in. You don't want to find yourself in crisis, preparing for the crisis. You want to have already prepared for the crisis before it comes about. And accountability assumes that you have relationship. And so we have been working and will continue to work to establish and deepen those relationships so that we can maintain a level of accountability with those who wear the blue uniform.
All right, and Reverend Hicks, we're on pace again as far as the record number of homicides for the year. In the 8-year-old and the 16-year-old children that were killed by stray bullets, there was seemingly no public outcry, no Black Lives Matters marches or demonstrations in that particular case. What's your thoughts on that? And you can also touch on accountability, because chances are that those bullets came from somebody in our community.
Right, and so you have clearly indicated that there are two different issues here. Right. One issue is a criminal mentality and a criminal environment that, in a lot of times, produces death. The other is somebody that is sworn to obey the law and to uphold the law and to protect and serve, who abuses the power that is given to them by a community and kills primarily what it seems like to be Black and brown people right now. So we have to make sure we keep those two issues separate, because that's the way confusion emerges. If we are going to respond to the crime and the violence that's within our community, we have to employ methods that are different, and we can look to see various different ways that we can, as a faith community, come together to ensure that those that we know, the police know who's shooting, the police know who is doing the crimes, and there have to be, and there are ways for us to be a faith community to respond to that. When it comes to the police killing, the homicides that we are seeing in Georgia, or Mike Brown back in the day, that is just cause to protest. I was in Ferguson and was helpful with a faith community there to lead that first protest in the middle of the day when the Ferguson police had to step down and the state police came in because they were forced to do that. And so there's a time to protest, but there's also a time to do the other 17 different things that lead toward change, because I think what people wait for is something from 1950 or the aesthetic from 1950, and we never want people to think that we can't pull people together to march around something 7 times and pull buses and thousands of people down. But in a postmodern era, we need to, with postmodern discrimination and racism, we need to come up with postmodern ways to deal with it. Utilize technology, and let's be very clear, there's some things that can take place, and in this environment, our mayor, Joe Hogsett, needs to have body cameras on folk. Yes, we made an announcement now, but there's been funding for this for the last few years. And so because we do see a history of being slow or a lethargy, then we need to make sure that we say to our mayor right now that if we don't have body cams by July, like you said, then every time you go around the corner, we're going to make some noise about the fact that you have not done what you need to do. We also need to have an African-American commission on a commission on African-American males. Cities around this state have a commission on African-American males, but Indianapolis, the center, the capital, does not have a commission on African-American males. Those are things that can be done right now. And 5 years ago, in response to Ferguson, there were a list of things that included body cams for Indianapolis that you could find an old Facebook post of mine way back in the day. And so the issue is not new. We've needed body cams for a while. We know what works, and we have to stop being so afraid of the FOP and the other OB. We have to stop being so afraid of them that we compromise our children and we put them on contemporary auction blocks and put them into a system of modern day slavery on a slippery slope to a pipeline that's leading them to prison.
All right, Minister Muhammad, what's your word to those who want to protest, who are protesting, and what do you tell the young men at the mosque about their interactions with police?
Well, first of all, it's very clear, whether it's Indianapolis or any other major city in the United States of America, that black and white are dealt differently when it comes to law enforcement. Whenever it's white, it's clinical, but when it's black people, it's criminal. Everything that we do wrong, we get treated like a criminal, or everything that we do, even if it's not wrong, we get treated like a criminal. But even when white people do wrong, even if it's a mass shooting, it's clinical. So that mathematics has to change when it comes to the spirit and attitude and disposition of law enforcement. However, on the bigger side of the equation, if you do a 3-year analysis of police shootings of black men versus black men shooting of black men, in the last 3 years, we've had 2,000 to 3,000 black males killed by police officers or correctional officers. But in that same 3-year window of time in America, 25,000 black men have been killed by other black men. So we can't stand outside the White House with a Black Lives Matter sign and forget to put up one at the Trap House too. We can't be out there talking about justice and what's right when it comes to people that wear blue and not also show that same sentiment. In fact, a greater sentiment to those of us that actually are black. We will never be able to demand respect from another people until we first show respect to ourselves. Our behavior toward one another teaches other people what they can get away with when it comes to us. So once we get ourselves in order, where our self-knowledge leads to self-love, and that self-love leads to doing right by one another, then we will have, as black men, the moral authority to stand in a firm position and say, we love ourselves and we love our sons and daughters like you love yours. You will not violate ours. And what we say in the nation, we carry no weapons. We carry not a gun, not even a weapon as small as a penknife. We teach that we should never be the aggressor. But if you are aggressed upon by whoever, CIA, FBI, ATF, Homeland Security, it makes no difference. If you are aggressed, then you fight with those who fight with you. So that is the way that we train our soldiers, is that we are peaceful when possible, but we will absolutely respond with violence when necessary. To the young soldiers, don't let protesting be a venting session that allows you to have your release valve of emotional energy where you stop at protest. Protest has to lead to policy change, and policy change has to lead to us having power by which we can regulate our own affairs economically and socially in the environment that we call the hood. If all it is stops at the street and you yell and hold up a sign and policies don't change and power doesn't come to our community, that is a waste of time. The word protest simply means an expression of someone that feels themselves to be powerless to produce a real change. Don't protest for the sake of protest. Protest for policy change and protest to bring power to your own community.
Very well said. Pastor Sullivan, we want you to jump in and talk to us about accountability. And Minister Muhammad just dropped some serious numbers about the number of, across the country, the number of black men that are killing black men. And we still have the 8-year-old and the 16-year-old. No one has come forward to say who's responsible for those children getting killed by stray bullets. What does accountability look like in our community?
You know, and I have to, Minister Muhammad is spot on. I have here in my office right now, and so this is really it's very near and dear to my heart, because as a pastor, and all the other ministers and pastors can testify, it's heating up and it's getting ready to get warm. We probably will have to perform more funerals. Steve, you've been over here with me several times for several homicide victims, dangers. So when we talk about protesting in the street, yeah, I get the passion and we need to do that. But again, I think our biggest threat right now for African American males is other American males. I do think it's a both and approach. And the analogy came to my mind the other day that when you see a child who's abused at home, it does justify them being abused at school. So we sometimes see when people talk about, the violence committed against African Americans by the authorities, and then say, well, hey, you guys kill each other too. I mean, those are two separate issues, but I think both of them must be addressed. Now, here's something that I really, really need, I believe, to address. Steve, you and I have talked about this. At some point, and I know it's very controversial, at some point we are going to have to address corporate-sponsored genocide that's being pushed and promoted through the music, because no other culture or race has music that's constantly into the hearts and minds of their young people to tell them to kill people who look like them. And then we prop up these different artists and celebrate them for death in our community. Now, I know this is something we don't like to talk about because, well, it's all of that, but at some point we have to address those who are behind the scenes profit off of our losses. And so I think as African-American people, we do have to address the amount in which we kill each other. Just right here in our community, a week or two ago, I stood out here on the porch because a 16-year-old girl was shot and killed by somebody we still don't know, an 8-year-old we still don't know. So it is hard, imagine, for the community to say, well, wait a minute, hold on. We see y'all kill each other all day long. And, so when you talk about these issues, if we're going to see change, and this is from a Black male who grew up on the east side of town, right in this community, if we're going to see change, we are going to have to address the level of hate and stuff that we got going on in our own community. And so this is something that I really believe needs to be nationally addressed. Now, for me, I really believe that a lot of what we're seeing being pushed, the mindset of our young people is being twisted and is being polluted by a lot of what they're seeing and hearing. I want to challenge people, and this will make your mouth drop. I've got a group of young guys in here working with me right now. I was on YouTube, and I just so happened to come across what they call drill rap. Now, out of Chicago, and now it's more mainstream. So there's several songs that I came across where you've got artists who come out of gangbanging, and they are showing you the actual murders on their videos.
Okay.
Mocking.
Okay.
So, I don't want to take about y'all. At some point, we got to address our own.
Let's talk about how people in the community, not only in your own organizations, your own churches, and in the mosque, how can they support their ministers at this? How important is that right now during the pandemic? Because I've had pastors tell me that since the pandemic, of course, their virtual and their outreach has increased, virtually. So what is the support would a minister like yourselves need right now from the community?
Well, the greatest thing that anyone could ever do to help someone is to analyze that person that they want to help. And analyze their purpose and what is it that they do and spend their lives trying to achieve. So if you are studying Dr. Hicks, or you're studying Pastor Sullivan or Pastor Davis, if you're studying their life's mission and their purpose, if you're looking at my life's mission and my purpose and what I give my life to, if you really want to help me, $1 would be good, a compliment is fine, but the greatest thing that you can do to help any of us is to look at what we have given our lives to that is good and noble, and you try to do that for somebody else. And if each one reach one, and each one teach one, and you study the one you love that you want to help, and you do what they would do if they were where you're at, you'll be helping the pastors, the teachers, and the leaders in the best way.
If I may, the opportunities that Crossroads has had to serve people in the midst of this crisis has not been because folk have been to the website or they've been to even one of our streaming services, but because of the lives that our individual members are leading and living. And so last week, I received a call to participate in the memorial service of Naya Cope. That was not because of anything the church did. That was because of the relationships that our individual members have in the community. And so I would just build upon what the minister has said and just encourage everybody in your individual spaces, live out the essence of who you have been created to be.
Pastor Hicks?
So in order to help, for a member of a church or for people that already have faith and are connected to us in our ministries, continue to do what you're supposed to do, what you've been trained to do. This is not the time to cower in the corner and to be scared, but now is the time for you to put on the whole armor or for you to lean into what your purpose is specifically. And as Minister Muhammad said, study, look at what's going on. If you want to help me, then next Sunday, while everybody else is trying to get into church, come and bring me a laptop, bring me some clothes, bring me some food to 877 Udell Street, the Bradley Education Building, where we've been feeding folk for the last 3 months before it got popular because we knew what was about to take place. Bring food, bring clothes, bring the necessary needed things. We need socks and underwear for schools around our area.
Yeah.
Bring that because that helps us to provide for people in the midst of a pandemic that is negatively affecting some people in some ways, but it is devastating for other people. And our mission right now is to ensure that the people that need resources and the people that need hope see within the faith community, and I use that term collectively for everybody, because God knows we need godly people to stand up right now and do what is necessary and needed so that our community is resourced and provided for. And it's our call, it's our responsibility right now. So yes, sow into us any way you can, but look at the ministry and mission that is taking place and figure out a way not to go someplace else, but to figure out a way to come and to be active and participatory in what we are seeking to do to provide hope and relevance and resource and relief during these COVID times.
And Pastor Sullivan, what's been the most people are doing to help in your ministry, and you think that would be effective in other ministries as well when it comes to supporting the leaders like yourself? Hit your space bar.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Apologies. I think all of the pastors and ministers here have, just really out everything that I would say as well. I would just add to that, continue what you've been doing, support, pray, and get behind what you see we get behind. As Esther, when they asked her to stand up for her people, and Esther said, okay, I'm gonna do this. I need y'all to fast and pray with me. So when you see us on the front lines and you see us, everybody here loves Black people. We love our community. So when you see us giving our life and our heart to make a difference in our community, get behind us, support that. Be on board with it. You can, get involved and push what you see us doing that's good for our community. So that's it during this time. Even if you can't be there as we serve food or as we hand out laptops, we do some of those things, or, right there giving out the clothes, make sure that you encourage what we're doing.
Okay. Reverend Davis, there's a playlist of worship music on your website. What are some of the other ways you're supporting church members and the community at this time?
You need a release valve. And Minister Muhammad talked about the gift of exhaling. The playlist is one of many opportunities we give people to exhale on Friday evening. It doesn't have to all be spiritual. We just have a happy hour for folks to come together and answer trivia questions that have absolutely nothing to do with the COVID-19 crisis has absolutely nothing to do with Black and brown bodies being killed in the streets. What we are launching now is an innovation we're calling social studies for our young people who have had to adapt to a different modality of learning. And so as we get into the summer months, we want to use the same virtual platforms that we are using for worship to enable our young people to come together and study in a social setting that they might be better prepared for the next school year as it comes around. We're also looking at innovative ways of reusing spaces. And so Crossroads AME Church happens to be one church in two locations, but as a result of two congregations coming to merge as one, but maintaining both properties. And so we're looking at ways that we can partner with other agencies in the community to help those who are forced into changing careers to have a place where they can go in order to be trained into their new normal. In addition, even to that, we are partnered with the Cheney Micro Learning Center, which is the 46218 zip code. That is a otherwise vacant home that has been repurposed as a tutoring center. This is a place where the church can go, as opposed to always having people come to the church to have their needs met. This is a place where our members go in order to provide food for those who are in the community and other resources that the church does not directly provide. So in this time, we've looked at what we do and we've looked at what we don't do and have done our best and continuing to make strides to repurpose the resources and assets available for our partners to serve the community alongside with us.
You know, and I talked to a lot of the pastors in our city. Many of them have older congregation members. And we know based on the numbers that most of the victims of COVID, be it testing positive or not surviving it, a large part of those people have been from our community. How do we convince, even when the all clears for everybody to open back up, whether it's 50% or 100%, how do we convince people in our community that, you know, just because the city is open back up, there's still some risk, there's a risk factor, especially young people who may appear asymptomatic and go home and give it to their older family members who end up in the hospital, and yet worse, who end up dead. What is the message from the church about still securing your family and keeping your family safe? Because just because it opened back up doesn't mean COVID left the city.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Minister Muhammad.
Well, I was thinking about something when you were talking, Brother Steve, the phrase pre-existing conditions popped into my mind very loud. And whether it's McDevil's, whether it's the White Casket, whether it's the Murder King, Taco Hill, Kentucky Fried Chicken, or Sick Filet, y'all didn't hear that. All of these places, we should start practicing social distancing from these places because they are all selling pre-existing condition combo meals. So one of the great takeaways that should come for us as a people is that this diabetes, the obesity, the high blood pressure, the hypertension, the health condition of us as a people has caused us to be operating all the time with pre-existing conditions that makes it easy for a pandemic to have an effect on us more so than other people. And you know that we're the last hired and the first fired. And if we're the last hired and the first fired in the economic world, when you go to the hospital, you're going to be the last one on the ventilator and the first one to be unplugged. So we can't afford, in this new era, when we go back to the new normal, we cannot go back to the new normal with the same old health that we once had. We've got to change our eating habits, and we have to change our exercise habits so that we can annihilate these pre-existing conditions that has us prone to suffer more from this pandemic. And who's to say that there won't be a COVID-20 or a COVID-21 coming in the near future? I hope that we will take this as a message and a warning to, one, let's get our relationship back right with the Lord of the worlds. Let's get our health together. Let's build our families and make them stronger. And let's disconnect the hard wire in our brain from happiness to spending. And let's connect that wire from happiness in the brain to saving and investing, that when a time hits like this, we'll be able to handle the stress of the reality. That's my suggestion, Brother Steve. Don't buy any more pre-existing condition combo meals. Let's get our health right.
Very well said. So I'm going to give the rest of the panel 30 seconds to wrap up, answering the same question. We'll start with Pastor Davis, go to Pastor Hicks, and then Pastor Sullivan. Pastor Davis, 30 seconds.
We are reminded again that pre-existing conditions do put us at greater risk when crises do come about. I would again state that we want to be as proactive and sustainable in our approaches so that the next time a crisis comes about, we will not be found with our feet flat.
Pastor Hicks?
So a couple of things. Agility. We have to continue to provide the opportunity for worship and even church life and fellowship in the midst of this. And so the church has to be agile. We have to make the moves necessary to continue to allow for not just young people that can perhaps endure this better than those old folk, but in order to do what we're supposed to do, we need to make sure we're inclusive of everybody. So not just agility. Second thing, the doors of the church are open, right? Other folk were closing. 2 months ago, we stood up 2 months ago while everybody was closed and said the doors of the church are open because we're still feeding people. We're still clothing people. We're still doing the ministry that's necessary and needed. And it could be that we need to change our entire mentality. We continue to have the same message, but the methods, they have to change in order for us to be Rhema, in order for us to be effective right here and right now.
Pastor Sullivan.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I think that we need to just be mindful how we take care of ourselves and realize, as we've all have mentioned and shared, we understand, you know, we are not treated as fairly and equal as everybody else. So make sure we do that much more taking care of ourselves and being careful to do that. And this is in this pause, I really believe God is allowing us to focus on Him, to pray and to plan, to prepare ourselves for what's next.
All right, very well said. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. This has been a great panel. You guys have dropped some serious knowledge and wisdom on those people in our community. We're hoping that we all get through this, and we also want us to let's stay together. This has been brought to you by the African American Legacy Fund. We want to say a special thank you to all of our panelists and to the Indianapolis Recorder. And we want you to have a very safe weekend. And please remember to stay COVID-free.
All right. Thank you.
Have a nice day, everybody. Be safe.